All right, so what I have here today is going to be one of the newest releases from the house of Lattafa, and this is a part of their Khamrah line. So this is Lattafa's Khamrah Dukhan, I believe is how you pronounce it. And this is obviously, it's a part of the Khamrah lineup. So you've got this one, which is the newest, Dukhan. You have Khamrah Kawa, which was the one, before it. And then obviously you have the original, Khamrah that came out a few years ago. And I love Khamrah Kawa. It's definitely, still the same scent profile for the most part as the original, just with, the slightest sort of changes in terms of like it adding cardamom and coffee, I would say are like the main things that you notice that are different between this and the original Khamrah. Also, to me, this doesn't come off as sort of sweet as what the original Khamrah does, but it is still, a sweet fragrance, and it still definitely has, that scent profile or DNA that the original has. And so we're going to be going over my first impressions of Dukhan here today. So as you can see, man, with the box, you get kind of like this burgundy or wine colored sort of, sleeve here. And then you've got like this sort of like red wood, sort of finish down here at the bottom. And then you've got Khamrah, Dukhan, and Lattafa. You've got an authenticity sticker here on the side. Nothing on this side. Lattafa logo up top. And then you've got like the ingredients and stuff like that written on the back. And on the bottom, you've got the production date, barcode, stuff like that. So this particular fragrance, this one was actually produced in March of last year. All right, and then just like all of the other Lattafa fragrances, this part lifts up and the bottle sits in there like that, kind of like in front of like a little mirror. So very nice presentation, as is, with all of the other Lattafa Khamrah fragrances. And this is also a 100 ml eau de parfum as well, just like the others. All right. So same presentation as you can see, except the bottle color and like the actual like collar and the sprayer and stuff like that, they're slightly a different color. So this is kind of more of like a red to yellowish color gradient or so. And then this is more kind of like I would say kind of like a black to gold sort of color gradient. So you get that. And then in terms of the sprayers, the sprayers are about the same. This one feels a little bit different. It feels a little bit more smoother to press than what the Khamrah Kawa does. And if we're gonna go over the notes here, the notes for Khamrah Dukhan are gonna be in the top notes. You get pimento, spices, and mandarin. In the mid, you get labdanum, incense, patchouli, and orange blossom. And then in the base, you get tobacco, praline, tonka, amber, and benzoin. So what do I get like when I initially spray this on? I feel like when I first spray this on, I do still get, like the same sort of like Khamrah vibe that I would get from the original, or that, I would get from Khamrah Kawa. Especially like within the first few seconds or so, like it definitely smells like, another Khamrah fragrance for the most part. But then as the fragrance is starting to kind of, dry down, that's when you really, really notice like the sort of warm spices that you get within this fragrance. So, you're not going to get, that really kind of like fresh, spicy cardamom that you get from, something like Khamrah Kawa. That's not present in this one. Obviously, you're not getting any sort of coffee note like you get with, in Khamrah Kawa. This is definitely, to me, more of like a spicier and also smokier sort of take on Khamrah. So I feel like the whole time, this fragrance, again, it still reminds you of that original fragrance DNA. So that's definitely something that, they've kept within this fragrance, within the sort of backbone of the fragrance it is still going to smell like Khamrah. So I think for people who have always kind of felt like the Khamrah fragrances have always been just too sweet for them, I still think that even though this one is not as sweet as like what the original is, and I would say even probably a little bit less sweet than what Khamrah Kawa is, it's still going to be on the sweeter side. Now, I don't see like any sort of dates note or anything like that within this fragrance, but at least for me, it still comes off as a very sort of sweet fragrance. Sweet, spicy, and then definitely it has like a smoky side to it. Now that smoky sort of aspect of the fragrance, that starts to come out really after like the first few minutes or so. So you kind of start off with like that sweet Khamrah introduction, that you would typically remember. And again, it smells a lot like Khamrah, but just not as sweet. And then, definitely as it starts to dry down, then that's when you start to get, that labdanum and incense. That definitely is, a main player in this fragrance for sure. Along with definitely the mandarin. The tobacco is there, but it's definitely more in the background to me. So this is not a heavy tobacco fragrance at all. If anything, I would say I'm getting more patchouli than I am tobacco in this fragrance, in the dry down. But yeah, man, I mean, overall, this would be the most, in my opinion, kind of masculine, take on the Khamrah scent profile. Now, again, to me, this is still going to be a very sweet fragrance. So, again, if you're just not a fan of Khamrah at all, either Khamrah or even Khamrah Kawa, because of how sweet they are, you may still find this fragrance a little bit too sweet even still. But, if you're a fan of the original Khamrah, if you're a fan of Khamrah Kawa, then I do think that this is worth checking out. Now, does this differentiate itself enough, from like the original Khamrah and, Khamrah Kawa? I think it does. It does. They're very, very similar, in terms of just like you could tell it's the same sort of DNA, but it definitely is different enough to where I think, if you have the original Khamrah as well as Khamrah Kawa, I would still say this is still worth a pickup for sure. Again, it definitely is a much more kind of smokier, spicier, yeah, definitely smokier, spicier, and a little bit more masculine version of, the Khamrah scent profile. All right, so that so far is, my initial thoughts on this fragrance. In terms of the performance and stuff like that, I'll be going over that in like my final thoughts video. But basically, if you want a spicier, smokier version of Khamrah that is, I would say, if anything, a little bit more unisex, but definitely to me more masculine leaning because of, the spicier, smokier aspect of it, then this is definitely one that I would recommend. If you are someone who has tried the other Khamrahs and you felt like they were a little bit too sweet for you, or maybe you even felt like they were feminine leaning, then I think that this would be the Khamrah that you would want to try, the Dukhan, for sure. because, you know, again, it does have a slightly more masculine element to the fragrance. All right. So that's my initial thoughts on Khamrah Dukhan. Definitely let me know in the comments if you all have picked this one up. And I mean, if so, what do you all think about Khamrah Dukhan? Do you all think it's worth a pickup? Do you all think that this is the best Khamrah within the, you know, Khamrah line? I mean, at least for me, I do think that I can say that I prefer this over the original Khamrah. Whether or not I prefer it over Khamrah Kawa, I don't know just yet if I can say that. I really enjoy the coffee note in this one, even though it's very subtle in Khamrah Kawa. It does really smell. It smells really good. But at the same time, man, I do think that the extra sort of smokiness and spices that you get within this fragrance, Dukhan, I do think that, you know, this does. It is kind of creeping up there with Khamrah Kawa. So, you know, I still need to get more wearings out of, you know, really both of them, kind of back and forth, to see which ones I actually enjoy the most. But I absolutely do intend to keep both of these fragrances in the collection for sure. I do feel like these do, you know, differ from each other enough to, you know, justify keeping them. All right. So that's my take on Dukhan from Lattafa, or Khamrah Dukhan from Lattafa. Again, let me know in the comments what you all think about this fragrance. Have you all smelled it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Let me know in the comments. Also, I'll have a link in the description to where you can actually purchase this. And if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see you all in the next video.